bank offers me some interest payment on that. They're going to pay me 3% interest. And they're going to take that 100 ounces of gold and they're going to lend it out at 5%. That's how they make their money, the 2% spread. Now that's fine so far, because I know that gold is in there, it's being loaned out, and someday, now I'm getting 2% interest, and someday I can ask for that principal back. It might be 6 months, it might be a year, whatever it is. Where the trick comes into this is the bank says, not only are we going to lend that money out, but we're going to allow you, Mr. Depositor, to draw on that money right now. All right? Which means that they can't possibly be saying that I can draw 100% of that deposit when they've also loaned out 100% of that deposit. Now maybe they don't loan out 100%, maybe they only loan out 90% or 80% or whatever it is. And that's the fractional reserve concept. They don't have enough reserves to pay out all of these obligations that they've made, especially with respect to paper currency, because usually that's the way it worked. Now, why do they do this? Well, they do this because they make money. Right? If I can loan out essentially more than I have in my reserves, by that difference I'm increasing interest payments. So the bankers are beneficiaries of this. And obviously the first lender, the person that receives that money, is a beneficiary because he's getting money they wouldn't have gotten otherwise, even though he has to pay interest on it. But then what happens down the line, this is the fascinating part about it. The market has set prices and wages on the basis of what it believes is the total amount of money that's in circulation. Along come the banks and they start generating new money that the market doesn't know about. It finds out about it because the money goes into circulation. So I'm the first user of this money. I've just received a loan from the bank. I'm going to go out and buy cement with it. And when I buy cement with it, cement is at the original market price. Now, as that money starts percolating into society, the market realizes there's more money than there was before. More money chasing the same amount of goods means the prices of goods go up, right? So eventually, somewhere down the line, that same cement that I just bought for $5 a pound is going to cost someone else $6 a pound. Now, if he buys that cement at $6 a pound before his income has increased commensurately, what's happening to his real wealth? He's losing real wealth, right? His costs have gone up, his income stays the same, his real wealth is decreased. Whose real wealth has increased in this transaction? Mine and the bank's, because we got the full value of the money right at the beginning. So this system transfers wealth. Somehow, you can't exactly follow it, but the principle is there. It transfers wealth from society to the creators of money. Well, it's always politically popular to impose financial burdens on somebody else. It tends to be politically difficult to impose financial burdens on someone who's living alongside of you, because they tend to have votes, they tend to have representatives who take their position. It's fairly easy to impose a financial burden on the future, because the future generation tends not to have any votes or representation at all in the present. As soon as you start talking about monetization of debt, where the banks come in and now buy governmental debt with new money that the banks have created through this special privilege they have of creating money in the Federal Reserve System, the redistribution of wealth that takes place through that process, most people don't understand. It happens through depreciation of currency, and the depreciation of currency usually leads to increases in prices, which the average person calls inflation. Inflation is really the increase in the money supply. The prices increase as a consequence of that. But the average person doesn't understand how this happens, and he's going to blame gold speculators in Switzerland. He's going to blame greedy unions. He's going to blame price gouging business. He's going to blame everybody but Congress and the banking system. So it's easy politically through monetization of debt to expand borrowing beyond prudent levels. Now, why is that tyrannous? Well, at a certain level, it's tyrannous. The definition of tyranny is the exercise of a power that no one should be allowed to exercise. And it's tyrannous because no one should be allowed to exercise a power that puts burdens on people that are not allowed an opportunity to be heard, an opportunity to vote, an opportunity to have some kind of a say. Granted, to some extent, you're going to have to do that in the nature of government as long as you have borrowing, but beyond a certain point, it becomes tyrannous. And it's beyond that point that the present system allows our political structure to move too easily. How much, take for instance, how much is the purchasing power of Federal Reserve notes lost since World War II? About 90%. You think that hasn't had some consequence in terms of redistribution of wealth, in terms of the way the economy is developed? Of course it has. The average person doesn't see it. He can't follow the lines of cause and effect, but it's there, and his life is quite a bit different from what it would have been if that hadn't occurred.
Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and salutation to the Akim out there pushing this truth and sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. Now, the video you just saw was a video on pretty much the basics on what it means to steal wealth from a large group of people and give it to a small group of people. Okay, so I just want to go quick to a quick scripture and get to current events on this topic. This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 13. Thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with thee all night until the morning. And right there you're seeing exactly what these elite, these financial bankers have been doing to the average Joe Schmo who doesn't know what's going on. All right? They're defrauding them. They're robbing them, literally, of their purchasing power and holding their wages. Okay? Because according to this society, as long as the prices and commodity goes up, your wages will also go up, but that's not the case. So let me get to a meeting, because this is going to be the title. It's going to be right here. This came out of Sputnik News on April 18, 2016. It says, what U.S. Fed Chairman Yellen told Obama during secret meeting. So there was a secret meeting between the POTUS and the Federal Reserve Chairman at the White House. Now, and the mainstream media didn't cover this, so that should cause alarm automatically. But it says right here, last week, U.S. President Barack Obama, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, and Chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve Janet Yellen held a secret meeting at the White House during which they discussed the U.S. and global economy, an official statement released by the White House said. However, according to former U.S. politician and political expert Ron Paul, the subject discussed between closed doors could be much more serious than it might seem. Let me blow this up for you, Salakia. The meeting at the White House was followed by an emergency secret meeting at the Federal Reserve Board and another non-official meeting devoted to bank reform, strengthening of the U.S. financial system and consumer report. Now, this is from Ron Paul. And he says, quote, the real reason for these secret meetings could be a panic that the Fed's 8-year explosion of money creation has not just failed to revive the economy, but is about to cause another major market meltdown, end quote. That's right. Because they would, like the gentleman in this video stated, just a quick reminder, Edwin Vieira, and then I think this was like a documentary from the creature from Jekyll Island, Edward G. Griffin. He did a documentary on, and he was one of the people that got interviewed, said, you know, if you keep increasing the money supply, you're actually causing a whole bunch of hazards to the economy, because there's too many dollars chasing few resources or few commodities. So let's go back. It says, the fact that both the U.S. President and U.S. Vice President were present at the meeting with the Fed chief made Washington experts assume serious banking problems and economic failures. And that's a website, geopolitical.day wrote. According to Superstation95.com, quote, in the history of the United States, it was never before taken place, it has never before taken place that both the president and vice president meet unexpectedly with the Federal Reserve, end quote. And that's right. This has never happened. This is unprecedented, as these crackers like to say, or, you know, some of these people like to say. And this is from the Superstation 95. Says, after emergency federal meeting today, Obama and Biden to meet with Yellen. Rumor, martial law discussions are for banking failure. And that's right. and because this system is done. So just let me get another quick scripture just to hit home. Again, you shouldn't be causing fraud to your neighbor, all right? And how this so-called white man doesn't follow this at all. There's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 23, verse 19. Thou shalt not lend upon usury, which means interest, to thy brother. Usury of money, usury of victuals, like food, usury of anything that is lent upon usury, putting interest. All right, in the hood, or according to like criminals, where they would say loan sharking, And so this is what these governments and these bankers have been doing to the people, mainly our people. You so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, you Israelites. That's why y'all broke and you're head above water in debt. All right, and in fact, some of y'all is just in the water. You in so much debt. I mean, if you're not in the truth, you might as well blow your head off, because Esau's going to tax your ass. Because if you can't pay the debt, where are you going? You're going to go to a FEMA camp. And that's how they're going to start. People that don't pay debts and all that. But that's just another topic. Last week, several U.S. economists reduced their tracking estimates for growth in the first quarter GDP to near zero after 1 point. That's not important. If the Fed continues its policy of gradual rates hike, it could lead to further economic problems and result in a bursting of another loan bubble. That's right. And the loan bubble, which Ron Paul speaks upon, is the student loan bubble, because you have a lot of these college goombas that went to school and they can't find jobs, and they still haven't paid off the loan that they took out to go to these prestigious colleges that they like to say. So, let's go back to the Superstation 95. It says, rumors swirling say, quote, martial law discussions over banking system failure are the reason President Obama and Vice President Biden are to meet with Fed. Chair Janet Yellen today, after the Federal Reserve's emergency meeting this morning. In the history of the United States, it has never been before taken place that both the President and Vice President meet unexpectedly with the Federal Reserve. Speculation is always flowing all over Washington, D.C. that it may have something to do with the, quote, survival of the government, end quote. Members of the House and Senate are said to have been up all night in discussions and meetings with floods of phone calls back and forth. Tuesday and Wednesday, the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meet in D.C., and Thursday, the IMF and World Bank meet in D.C. as well. Yeah, this happened last week. So, what happened at the IMF? It says, IMF cuts global growth outlook again, warns of political risk. All right. So what is happening is that more and more people, even at the top, are losing confidence in the system. Just to read real quickly on this article, it says the International Monetary Fund warned on Tuesday of the risk of political isolationism, notably Britain's possible exit from the European Union, and the risk of growing economic inequality, just like those two scriptures, you defrauding, people. That is cuts global economic growth forecast for the fourth time in a year. In the run-up to the annual spring meeting of the IMF and the World Bank in Washington, D.C. this week, the IMF said the global economy was vulnerable to shocks such as sharp currency devaluations and worsening geopolitical conflicts. And really what it is the when they say currency devaluation, there's no value in all these currencies, and America's dollar, the same thing. So I'm gonna jump over to an article to prove that people are losing faith and confidence in the American dollar, and then I'm gonna get you to a key term that I pulled up. So this is from Forbes.com. It says U.S. hostage to China and Saudi Arabia, but only one seems to matter. So let me read that again. This came out April 22nd, 2016. U.S. hostage to China and Saudi Arabia, but only one seems to matter. So you know why Obama had to meet with Janet Yellen, because they knew they had to come to these meetings with Saudi Arabia on what's going on in their financial aspect, as well as certain things that's on a political spectrum, the 28 pages, 9/11. But let's get back to the main topic, which is the decline on the dollar. It says the U.S. is somewhat hostage to just two countries in this world, China and Saudi Arabia, but only one has the backing of a nation's elite, including the New York Times, and it ain't China. when it comes to job losses, China is the villain. You see how they blame everybody else instead of blaming that it's really America just increasing the money supply? Even though the Saudi Arabia has declared war on U.S. shale, China takes the brunt of the criticisms for manufacturing policy Washington created in favor of U.S. corporations decades ago. Right. Because instead of complaining about the dollar, they're going to blame China, which you shouldn't be blaming China. The only reason why China is cutting back and stealing jobs is because, one, the cost of living in America has increased so that corporations don't want to build a company in here where they got to pay their certain employees wages according to the cost of living. So what do? They outsource it to all these other countries, mainly China. When it comes to U.S. debt, China is the one country singled out for owning too much of it. Saudi Arabia's holdings, meanwhile, are a mystery. And this is the point I want to get at. American debt. Okay, and what are they debt are they talking about? Well, they're talking about America's bonds. Okay, government bonds. All right, so what is a government bond? This is according to Investopedia. The debt security issued by a government to support a government spending and often issued in the country's domestic currency. Government debt is the money owed by any level of government and is backed by the full faith of the government. And so who's the full faith of the government? Us slaves here, because that's where our Social Security comes at, because we're used as collateral. Federal government bonds in the United States include the savings bond, treasury inflation protected securities, and others. Before investing in government bonds, investors need to assess several risks associated with the country, such as the country's risk, political risk, inflation risk, and interest rate risk. In other words, usury. And all this is why America is going down the drain, because the elite are tired of this nation and they're doing everything they can to get rid of this. When I'm talking about the elite, I'm not talking about your average multi-billionaire. I'm talking about your trillionaires like your Rothschilds, your Rockefellers, okay? Who really is just working on the left-hand side for the Most High. But that's too deep for y'all. All right? Because at the end of the day, America's supposed to go down in flames. And this is one of the main reasons why. So let's get back to the article. There's a key point I want to get to in this article. Here we go. This is it right here. The market is either worried that a weak dollar will cause China to dump treasuries, which is government debt, and impact bond prices, or that strained relations with Washington will cause it to increase trade in its own currency, also impacting bond prices. So America's what's known as between a rock and a hard place, because either way, America's dollar, okay, has to have a certain value. But if there's too much dollar in the system and there's too much and it's being used, okay, there's no value in it. All right. If China did that, then that would be when things really got interesting, because bulk of world trade, including trade with China, is priced in dollars, as Saudi's oil. But Saudi, once again, is never mentioned when it comes to U.S. debt, because Saudi holds the key to global petrodollars. That's right, because in 1971, under Richard Nixon, all right, he detached the dollar from the gold and then attached to oil. And who was the main country pumping out the most oil? Saudi Arabia. So that was the way Saudi Arabia are cahoots with each other. Now, the crazy thing is that it's funny how Saudi Arabia isn't mentioned on how much debt they hold. And all this allegations, right, by the 28 pages and those 9/11 truthers, they're saying Saudi Arabia was involved in the 9/11 crisis. And now Obama's, is putting out these 28 pages, as well as Congress and all that, is now shaking Saudi Arabia to their course. So Saudi Arabia, they can drop the bonds with China and say, screw you, America. And if they drop the U.S. Treasury bonds and China drops U.S. Treasury bonds into the economy, America's economy, that's going to cause hyperinflation. All right. And here's the main thing why China's getting away from the dollar. They're backing their yuan to the gold. So let's get with another scripture. It says Jeremiah 22:13. Woe unto him that built his house by unrighteousness. That's right. You America. Okay, you built your house on unrighteousness. All right. You manipulated the dollar. You caused your own people in your own country to be slaves to the dollar, collateral to the dollar. And you're hurting the rest of the world with your wicked ass dollar. And its chambers by wrong. That uses the neighbor's service without wages and giveth him not for his work. That's right. Because you don't even pay your people in America, okay, mainly Jake, the so-called black spans in America who make up 12 tribes, a decent wage. All right? So let's get back to this article. It says Soros says China's economy looks like the U.S. before the crisis. So that's why China is turning to the gold and backing their gold to the yuan. Because what they're trying to do, because China's going to collapse. They're trying to make a soft landing in terms of economic crisis, because they know it's going to collapse. So they want to make it a soft landing so they're not affected as hard as they would have been if they didn't go to the gold. But there's a key point from that demon Soros, who's this cretin. It says what's happening in China eerily resembles what happening during the financial crisis in the U.S. in 2007 and 2008. Growth, quote, Soros said, most of the money that banks are supplying is needed to keep bad debts and loss-making enterprises alive. All right? So there you go. You have it. With all these meetings happening under Obama and the Federal Reserve Chairman, and then they're looking at China and what China's doing. Bad times is coming to America and the rest of the world. All right, and then just to finish it off with an article, and then I'm gonna read the last scripture. This came out of Jacksonville.com. Now this is with Puerto Rico. This is another reason why all these other countries are being affected. Puerto Rico is mainly affected by the U.S. dollar, because Puerto Rico's currency is the U.S. dollar. They don't, you so-called Puerto Ricans, you Ephraimites, that be loving Puerto Rico, you don't even have your own currency. But then you think you're in there trying to make changes by protesting. You're an idiot. America's the one that controls your country, and all you gotta do is look at the face of the dollar. So it says mounting debt crisis in Puerto Rico could threaten Jacksonville's shipping trade, and that's here in Florida, in a town called Jacksonville. That's up north in Florida. But I want to get to the point of what's going to happen. First of all, they have a deadline of May 1st. Yeah, let me just read the first part. It says Puerto Rican government has been grappling with a $422 million governmental debt payment that is due May 1st. Efforts in Congress to provide debt restructuring have stalled, and it now appears that May 1st deadline will not be met. Now, May 1st, now what's that symbolic with, huh? The manifestation of what the conspiracy theorists, or, you average so-called conscious man thinking he knows something. Oh, yeah, the Illuminati, it was created in 1776 and all that nonsense, right? But that's when the deadline is, May 1st. But that's not the point I want to get to. The point I want to get to is what this guy said in terms of, what's his name? Where's the point? Yeah, Douglas Johansson, an associate professor and chairman of the Department of Marketing International Business at the Jacksonville University Davis College of Business, said, okay, this is what he said. He said, the implications of Jacksonville are really bad. If the bulk of the government's expenditures are going toward debt service, that really crowds the opportunity for Jacksonville exporters, Johansson said. Quote, what that really means is that all government spending toward debt service means there will be less money available for things like purchase for types of products and are shipped to the port. Quote, end quote. In other words, basic necessities like food and other food-related commodities that the Puerto Rican government would pay for would be sacrificed for paying the debts, Johansson said. So meaning, a lot of you Puerto Ricans are about to starve in Puerto Rico. That's why there's a mass influx of a whole bunch of Ephraimites running to Florida, because they see the bad times that's coming to Puerto Rico to a point where they're not going to even get basic necessities like food. Okay? So that's what I just want to bring out real quickly. All right? And last one, Proverbs 28. He that by usury and unjust gain increases his substance. He that by usury and unjust gain increases his substance. That's right. That's your elite, these congressmen, the politicians, and all that. He shall gather it for him that will pity the poor. That's right. Who's that he shall gather it? The Most Highness Son Yahweh Shai. Because eventually, these so-called politicians and these elites, man, We're going to get all the shit that they stole from us, man. Everything. All right? And we are the poor. And the poor, who are the poor? Us Israelites, man. You so-called black, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Who wake up to the fact that you're not so-called black, Hispanic, and Native American. You are Israelites of the 12 tribes. And the Lord is coming to get his elect out of the 12 tribes. And who's going to give all the substance that was taken. You know, victuals, gold, silver, everything. So that, you know, real quick lesson. Just to throw it, to show you what's going on. All right. So once again, I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone. And salutation to the Akim out there pushing this truth and sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. Shalom.